Praise Him. Praise His holy name. God is worthy. Our God deserves our praise. We will praise Him forevermore. God is worthy. God deserves our praise. We will praise Him forevermore. Praise Him. Praise Him. Praise Him. Praise His holy name. Praise Him. Praise Him. Praise Him. Praise His holy name. God is worthy. Our God deserves our praise. We will praise Him forevermore. Our God is worthy. Our God deserves our praise. We will praise Him forevermore. Praise Him. Praise Him. Praise Him. Praise His holy name.
All right. We want to say greetings to everyone and thank you all so much for being here today. We're grateful to the Lord for you all coming out and sharing the Word of God with us all. So thankful to be able to be in the presence of God today. All right. One thing the Lord laid on my heart to share. So we'll just start off with this. When you don't want to be obedient, and it's not in your heart to be obedient to what the Lord has commanded, regardless of what it is, then all the devil needs is for you to be disobedient. All he needs for you to have is a disobedient heart, and that's all you need. And he'll give you a lifetime of excuses. You see, a lifetime of excuses. All he needs for you to do is be willing to be disobedient. You see, and he'll give you a lifetime of excuses to be disobedient. All right, hold on just a second. So, most of us, we've heard of this whole thing, glass and water, and people say it's two types of people in the world. So what are they? The pessimists. What does the pessimist say? Half empty. And what does the optimist say? So the question is, what category do you fall in? And you be careful before you answer that. Let's see. The pessimists say this is half empty. And the optimists say this is half full. And most people fall under one or the other. But then there's a third class that the world won't tell you about. See, while the pessimists and the optimists are looking at this, trying to figure out and trying to trade philosophy between each other concerning half empty or half full, believers are drinking it and giving it back to God to put more in. Everybody understand? Mm-hmm. So if this is all that God chooses to give at a time, now this is the way I choose to live. I don't care if it's half empty or half full. That's the way believers live. Doesn't matter. It could just be a drop in there. Everybody understand? You're going to take that drop and then give it back to God. And if that's how you have to sip water for the rest of your life, you know that God is the provider.
Amen.
Everybody understand?
Amen.
But people live with that mindset. Half empty, half full. Can't get past that. The people that say it's half full, they're trying to encourage the people that say it's half empty. Well, just look on the bright side. But God's people, we live on the outside of that. You see, we're not arguing over how much is in that glass. We drinking what God has provided because we know that there's a lot more where that come from.
Amen.
You see, preachers today, even preachers will say, well, Jesus was rich. The Bible doesn't say that he was rich. In fact, when some people wanted to follow him, he said, now you take account now, it's going to be a rough life. Even I don't have a place to lay my head. So what it was, he had no certain dwelling place. He stayed with different people. He spent the night. Sometimes he slept out in the open, you see. God provided for his needs as he went along. It wasn't having the rest of God and the faith, having faith in God is not based on how much money you have in your account.
Amen.
More than it is how much faith you have in God to provide when the need comes.
Amen.
Now we see a picture of that when the children of Israel come out of Egypt. They weren't pulling refrigerators and freezers behind them. They didn't have storehouses to put food in. Every day they had to depend on God to provide for them. You see that? Now that's the way. That's where all believers need to be. Even if you have, a nice size checking account, a savings account, or whatever you may have, you need to live in that place where you know God is going to provide when a need comes. And sometimes he provides after the need comes. Now that's where people start panicking. People save money, and they don't want to touch their savings account. My question is, what are you saving it for? You see, nothing wrong with saving money, nothing wrong with planning, you see. But you have to make sure that you remain in the middle where you're not saving money because you don't trust God.
Amen.
Everybody understand? Because God will know. He'll know. He'll know. And that's where he'll shake you at. You see that? You have to have an understanding, even if you're living comfortable, even if you're able to pay all your bills, have some money left over, you still have to understand you cannot trust this world system the way that it's set up now. You have to understand at any moment something can happen that can come and drain the little money you done been saving for years. So if you're trusting in what you see in the glass, the water there, instead of trusting the one that created it, you're in trouble. You're in trouble, and you'll have a hard time. Your Christian walk will be like this. When God's providing, I'm up. When it look like he done turned his back on me, I'm down. See that? There are people that get college degrees, not because they really want one, but because they think it's going to some kind of way open up doors for them. And they feel like if I get a degree, then I'll be able to make good money. Now, you have to understand, I always feel like whatever it is that come up in your life, you ought to get to the root of it. Get to the root of it. Why are you going after a college degree? Is it because you don't trust God and you think that degree is going to open up doors that God plans on closing? Everybody see? God provides for birds. The birds aren't out working. They're not out getting any kind of degree. Now he said if he cares for them to the point where not one of them fall out of the sky and die without him knowing about it. How much does he care for you? You're worth more than the fowl of the air. So at some point, we as believers have to learn to start trusting in God in every area of our lives. In every area. You see that? Because when we don't trust in God, then we make bad decisions. When we don't trust in God, we make very, very bad decisions. We make decisions out of haste. In fact, let's go look at that in the 30th chapter of the book of 1 Samuel. And we're going to just start reading at verse 1. The 30th chapter of 1 Samuel, verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass, when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag, and burned it with fire." How many of you remember who the Amalekites were? Not their lineage, but things that we've talked about concerning them. These are the same people that God told Saul to destroy, to utterly destroy. Every living creature, every living being in there, destroy it. So fast forward about 15 years later, because Saul was disobedient. Now he's still alive. He's about to leave here. You see that in a few weeks. Talking about Saul. But fast forward 15 years later, that's their problem. The Amalekites. Something that God told the Israelites to utterly destroy. Now, here's the lesson in that is this. What if God told you to destroy that you're just gonna bug you later on? You might not see it. When God tell you to do something, you might not see the results of the disobedience for years later, but I promise you, you'll see it. When God tell you to do something, you do it. You see that? You don't question it. You just trust Him and do it. You see that? Now, I want you to think about something. That was something that was hard. You know, God told them to kill babies. So, you know, if you're not careful, you can go out with your heart of compassion and it can be in the wrong place. You have to keep in mind God doesn't live in time. So when He tells you to do something, it's because He sees something, a trap down the road that the devil's got set for you. So let's say that they went in there with the idea of, we're not going to kill everybody, we're going to just kill the men. So let's leave the children alone. You know, God loves children. But you know what? It was some boys in there. Now, they killed some people. You see, they killed some men. They didn't leave everybody alive. They killed quite a few people. But they did not utterly destroy them like God told them. God wanted them to wipe the Amalekites off the face of the earth. 15 years later, those children are grown and mad about their daddy. So now it's payback time. And God never gave the command again to utterly destroy them. They're going to be a thorn in your flesh. Whatever you're disobedient in, that will be your thorn. You see that? So here's proof here. You see what happens. A lot of times we don't see the other end of it. We just see, you know, God told me to do this, but I'm going to skip by and do just a little bit of it. And then, so look at what happened there. Verse 2, "And had taken the women captives that were therein, they slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away and went on their way." So what happened was, David, now Saul is still alive. David and Saul have been chasing David for about 15 years now. And so David is back and forth in between, you know, from one nation to the next, from one country to the next, running away from Saul, trying to keep from killing him. And so one day they're off and gone. Now David had about 360,000 men that were loyal to him out of all the tribe of Israel. That was his army. About 360,000 men were following David, because they knew that he was due to be king and they wanted to be on his good side when he got there. So they're just avoiding Saul, trying to keep from killing him, you know, hoping that he's just going about his business, I guess, but he wouldn't do it. And so they're moving back, just moving all around, you know, like fugitives. And so one day they went somewhere and left their children and wives behind at the camp. And a few days later, when they come back, the Amalekites have showed up and burned down the camp and took, you know, the women and children with them. So let's see what happens here. Verse 3. "So David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives." Now, these are Amalekites. They were some terrible people. They didn't know that their family members were still alive. And they knew how terrible the Amalekites were, so in their minds, if they've taken them, they're dead already. All right, let's go and keep reading. Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep. Could you imagine that? 360,000 men. All of them crying at the same time. Until they had no more, didn't even have any more strength to weep. Because why? The glass is half empty. Everybody see? So what are we talking about today? Overcoming hopelessness. I think it's sad. I think it's really sad that there are people who say that they believe in God and still walk around with hopelessness. That spirit that's dealing with you, making you feel hopeless, that's the cousin of suicide. When somebody feels hopeless, the devil have taken away their reason to live. And then so you move from hopelessness to the only reason why you ain't just ended your life is because you don't want to die and go to hell. You know you can't repent after the fact. Now that's a miserable state to be in. You see that? When you're hopeless, you don't have anything to look forward to. Now let me just stop right here because we have to add this. There's really no such thing as people having hopelessness. They have hope. It's just not in where it needs to be. Everybody understand? So people have hopelessness in different areas, but it's not like God just done took your life away and you just ain't got no hope. You see, you got it. You just got it focused in some areas, and you need to focus it in some other areas. Now let me prove it to you. When everybody that's sitting here, when you woke up, you had hope to get here. Now, if it was hopelessness there, you wouldn't have even wasted your time. If you thought the end of the world was going to come before you could get here, you wouldn't have wasted your time getting here. Think about all that went into you getting here. You had to have some gas in your car. And you took your keys with the hope that your car would start. You went to your closet. You didn't sleep in the clothes that you got on now. You made preparation for something that you were hoping for. That's amazing to me. People got hope. I'm going to go to church. I believe God's got a word. I'm going to church. And then when they get here, I don't know if God can heal me. You see how the devil play with you? I don't know if I deserve that. Or I don't know if God is still going to move on my back. It's too much I done. You see that? Now you had all that hope to get here. You see that? You see what I say? The people ain't the same. The optimist and the pessimist, exactly the same. Both of them looking at the glass. Neither one of them drinking it. You're optimist to get here, a pessimist to receive what God has for you. You see? That's not God's will. And so people have, they have hope. It's just, I think sometimes what happens is life experiences. The devil train you with your life experiences if you're not careful. You see that? I've heard people say, well, people that's done been in bad relationships, I'm just not going to get in another relationship. I'm not giving my heart to anybody else. I'll never be, completely all in the way that I was before. Then you have to ask yourself, well, what's the purpose of getting in any kind of relationship at all? That's right. You become a pessimist. You see that? You'll become somebody that folks don't want to be around. Now, I'm telling you, there's a spirit behind it. I know because I used to sit in the presence of a pessimist. And you can say something good, and they were going to find something bad. It's a spirit. It's a spirit that keep you from grasping a hold of faith and what it is that God want for you. What does the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians tells us are the three things that we need to grasp a hold of? Faith, hope, and love. Those three things, they work together. You see that? But if you done lost hope, faith is going to be right behind it. You'll lose that as well. You see that? And then behind that will be love. A person that don't have hope, how can you say you believe in God? What condition do you think you're in spiritually when you think all hope is lost in certain areas? When what is wrong with hope? It makes you have a defeated mindset. And basically you're telling God you can't do it. That's what a lack of hope does. And really what it does, it shows that you don't trust God. Mm-hmm. So the definition of hope, according to the Bible, it has to do with it has to do with a loss of expectation and desire. Mm. You see that? For a certain thing to happen. It comes from the words that means trust, to tarry, in other words, to wait for something. And that's what we have a problem with. And expectation. Now, the key word there, the other word, is the word help. You see? Now, when I started talking to Brother Junior as an adult, and sometimes he would pray when we got on the phone, or sometimes he would share a testimony, and and some of you may remember some of those old people, instead of them using the word help, they would say hope. The Lord helped me tonight. How many of you have heard old people say that? It's because those words are kin. So when somebody have lost hope, it's because they're not expecting help. Mm-hmm. They just think, well, I'm in it on my own and I've been trying it and ain't nothing worked. And God will let you get there so that you'll finally learn to depend on Him to begin with. You see that? So, a couple of weeks ago, I was in the hospital during the time of this service. And, people were writing and emailing and things like that, concerned, I imagine, about what was going on. And some people, I guess, just thought I wasn't just going to come back. Now, I was watching the service, sitting up in my bed. Now, when most of you came to visit, I had on regular clothes. I was ready to go. You see, I wasn't trying to lay up there and look sick and trying to, or anything like that. But I noticed something that bothered me during the service that I was watching when I wasn't here that Saturday. It just seemed like people were down. And some people were even, I guess, in a way trying to comfort my wife like she was already widowed. Now, I'm going to tell you, like I've shared before, the Lord made it clear to me that He shows us things to give us something to look forward to. Amen. To overcome whatever it is that we got to go through. We're not going to get through life without going through something. Amen. We're going to have to go through some things. We're not going to escape, unscathed by the devil. We're not going to escape his wrath. We're going to feel a little bit of his anger. We're going to be tested. We're going to be tempted. We're going to go through some things. But what it is before it happens, God will show you the end of it so you ain't fainting in your mind about stuff. Mm-hmm. Amen. We see that. You see, now, from the very beginning of Jesus' ministry, He was telling His disciples, the Son of Man is going to go to Jerusalem, they're going to crucify me, and then on the third day I'm going to be raised up. And so when He's raised up, what does He do? He finds them all depressed. And when He's in a good mood, They asking him, well, you ain't heard what happened to the man we thought was the Messiah? You see what happens there? The angel of the Lord came to me one day and told me, the reason why I'm showing you these things, these good things, is because there are going to be some bad things in between. So I'm giving you something to hold on to. And that's for anybody that believes God's word, that takes him at his word, that call themselves a believer. God has shown you something to hold on to.
Amen. Thank you, Lord.
When, what made Abraham the father of faith? You see, we look at his mistakes. We can see how he went and married another woman and had a baby named Ishmael with that woman. And then God came to him and told him, no, that's not who, I know you love him because that's your son, but that's not that's not the seed of promise. That's not who the promise is for. You're going to have a baby by Sarah. You're going to have a son by her. And so when that son was born, what did God do? When he was about 15 or 16 or so, take him up there to the top of that mountain and kill him. Well, Isaac didn't have any babies on the side nowhere. So the Bible makes it clear in the book of Hebrews what made Abraham the father of faith. Because he knew, even if I kill him, God's going to have to raise him up. Because God is not a liar. In Isaac shall thy seed be called. Isaac didn't have any children at that time. So Abraham understood, even if I have to kill my son, God's going to have to raise him up. God is not a liar. And see, that's what every believer has to stand on. The fact that God, he cannot lie. Even the devil stand on that one.
Amen.
Look at what the book of James says. Oh, you believe that there's one God? The devil believed that. Now, the devil's not trying to follow God, but he believes him. He knows. You see that? So here we are. We're followers of God, and the devil's got more faith than we got. All right, so let's keep reading here. Verse 5 says, and David's 2 wives were taken captives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of what?
Stoning him.
You see what I mean now? Why did he speak of stoning him? Because they had wept, and after they got done with all that mourning and grieving, I want you to think about what was taking place during this time of mourning, during this time of weeping. They didn't see that glass as half full. In their minds, everything is already defeated. We know how bad the Amalekites are. When did they get saved and decide to keep people alive? We know how bad they are. We've already, you think about it, 15 years earlier, we've already destroyed most of what they got. You think they're going to keep our people alive? So now they begin to ration in their minds and begin to make decisions based on what the devil have convinced them of. You're defeated. It's all said and done. Now let's turn all our attention on David and kill him. You see, let's forget about the fact that we're following him because we know he's supposed to be king. Mm-hmm. Let's go kill him. He's the reason for it. You see how you make those hasty decisions based on the picture that the devil has painted for you? When you lose hope, you become hopeless. You make all kind of bad decisions. It's decisions out of desperation. You know, many of you have heard me share that story about how when I joined the Navy, and right before I went to boot camp, we went swimming, and how I challenged everyone that was with us to swim out to the middle of swim to the other side of the lake, and we all did. But then, but my thinking was we were all swim back, and so when I got in the middle of the lake swimming back, I looked around and everybody's walking around. But I'm thinking, well, I'm fine, ain't nothing wrong. I can just go ahead. I'm too far out here now. I'm already halfway here. So I keep swimming, and then right as that happens, my whole body locks up. I have no more strength whatsoever. So I began to sink. I guess it was maybe, seemed like about 20 feet deep of water. And I'm down at the bottom, on my feet, with no strength to swim. And so while I'm down there, now, it's funny how God will prepare you if you pay attention to it, and only the Lord did this. Every time when I was young, when we went swimming, my brother and I, we would play this game of seeing who could hold their breath the longest. And I got up to about 3 or 4 minutes. No breathing. So you see how the Lord was preparing me? That came in handy when I'm 20 feet underwater with no strength to swim. So what I was doing, when I was on my feet, touching the bottom of the water, I began to do like this to try to shake that stiffness out of my arms. And I would walk. And then when I felt like, strength had come back, I would go back up and catch some more breath and swim for a little while longer. And then when I'd go down, I just drop down just like I'm standing now. Now, I know that was God that was with me. So, what's the difference between that situation and then somebody else that end up drowning? Because the one that drowned, they've lost hope. I'm out in the middle of this lake. There ain't no hope for me. So what do? They start panicking. And see, when you are walking in hopelessness, you'll panic. You'll be making all kind of foolish decisions behind panicking. You see that? So I was a tiresome somebody when I finally got up to I sat there, it seemed like for 30 minutes, just trying to catch my breath good. Because, after a while, that wears out. You see, you can hold your breath, you may be able to hold your breath for 4 minutes or so. But after doing that so many times, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. That's not something that's just renewed in you. After a while, you just pass out. You see. And so when I got right to the edge of it, probably from here to that counter there, I just was so tired, I just sunk to the bottom, and I remember sitting there. Now, at that time, I was only in about maybe 8 or 10 feet deep of water. Got that close and just sunk, couldn't go anymore. And I just sat there on the bottom, literally sat on the bottom, Indian style, with my legs crossed. And I began to think about my funeral. Like, you're young like that, you begin to wonder how you're going to leave here. And you think, well, I guess this is it. And then I begin to wonder, how is my mother going to take it when she finds out I'm gone? And as I'm thinking all of this, literally, now you take this literal, a hand reached down, and I had on the shirt and grabbed me by the back of my shirt and pulled me up and sat me on the bank. It was the angel of the Lord. This far away from him. You see.
Amen.
So what I learned from that, when God's got something for you, the devil can't take your life before it's done. Now I can spend hours up here telling you stories like that. That's the reason why my faith don't get shaken when the devil show up. I expect him to be the devil. He ain't gonna ever get saved. You see? So I expect him to be exactly who he is. And he's going to be the best devil he can be. So what you think he got for you sideline Christians that's just trying to tiptoe? You think you're going to tiptoe around him and him not notice you? You're going to have to be bold because he's bold. You see that? You're not going to get by just being, just tiptoeing and hoping that you don't cause too much ruckus. I want to be friends with God, but I don't want to get the devil mad. That's not going to work. You see that? The devil, you ain't got to be saved for the devil to be mad at you because you're made in the image of God. He mad at you because you were born. You see that? So David finds himself in a very peculiar place. I want you to think about the weight that's on his shoulders now. Think about that weight there. Here it is. His 2 wives are gone as well. He has a lot he can be hopeless about. His 2 wives were taken as well. It ain't like they just left his wives and his family. You see? And then he had some other stuff on his shoulders. These weren't the only wives that he had. Keep in mind now, he married Michal, Saul's daughter. And so when Saul decided he wasn't going to like David anymore, he took Michal and gave her to another man. How many of you know that story? That when Saul died, he went and got his wife back. And the man that she was married to, he's following behind her crying about it. Yeah, it's some real drama here. These are real people going through real things. And so David wept just like the rest of them. But what did they do? Hopelessness has to find somebody to blame. Has to. You see that? The hopelessness, when somebody don't have hope, they don't like being around people that's got it. It's got to blame somebody. So we're going to blame you, David. If we hadn't followed you, we wouldn't be in this situation. You see. Let's go ahead and keep reading. Verse 6. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was what?
Grieved.
See that? Grieved. Hopeless. So we're going to kill you. That's going to make us feel better. See? Every man for his sons and for his daughters, but David did what? Everybody see that? Now, if you're not careful, you'll be one of those, I guess the best way to put it is bloodsuckers. You call them people because you want to be encouraged. After a while, it's going to run out. You're going to have to learn to do what David did. He had a whole army, 360,000 men ready to kill him. What else was he going to do? He didn't go surrender and say, y'all right. You see. So not only was he in despair because his wives were gone and his family was gone as well, now he got folks that's been running with him for 15 years. They're ready to kill him. Everybody have turned their backs on him. Look at what he did here. But David encouraged himself how?
In the Lord his God.
You know what that means? You know what that means? He encouraged himself in the Lord his God? He wasn't thinking, well, I got plenty of money. I'm pretty good at fighting. Maybe I can kill a good 10 of them before they kill me. He didn't, in other words, again, I have to say, everything that's in this Bible is in here for a reason. It didn't just say David encouraged himself. It said he encouraged himself in who? The Lord his God. In other words, what was he doing? He was going over in his mind. God have delivered me from this. That's what all everything that you read in the book of Psalms, most of that, he wrote. He was talking about real life situations that God had. So that's what he was doing, going over in his mind. This ain't my first dance with the devil. The devil's been trying to take my life. And God have appointed, even all my brothers weren't anointed when they walked under that oil. It only fell on me. So did God save me these 15 years for me to be killed by my own men? No. You see that? David kept going. He didn't just get up and get dressed with hope for getting to church. He said, if God allowed me to get there, that means God wants to talk to me.
Amen.
God's got something for me if I get there. You see that? So he encouraged himself in the Lord his God. He thought about things along those lines, spiritual lines, not natural. That's what many of us, especially if we're carnal-minded Christians, that's what we make our mistake at. We leaning on the world, and we're leaning on what we've done instead of what God has done. You see that? That's what the testimony is. All right. Verse 7, and David said to Abiathar, the priest, Ahimelech's son, I pray thee, bring me hither the ephod. And Abiathar brought thither the ephod to David. And David inquired at the Lord, saying, shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered, who is he? God answered, pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. Everybody see that? So while David is praying, what the rest of them doing? 360,000 of them plotting on how they're going to kill David. Now, verse 4, let's go back to that. It says, then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to what? To weep. They cried for a long time. It take a long time to get to that point. I want you to notice something. Did God see their tears and come down and say, it's going to be all right. You know they still alive. Y'all going to pursue, and y'all going to get everything that, you know, that was taken from y'all. Did God say that? He didn't speak until they had enough sense to go to him and inquire. The ones that were defeated, they never would have known that their wives were alive until somebody had enough sense to go and inquire of God about it. David, in his heart of hearts, felt like, with hope, our wives and children are still alive. Other than that, he would never have inquired to God, God, do you want us to pursue? Everybody understand? The rest of them are already defeated. Wives are gone. What's the purpose in this pursuing? Children dead. What's the purpose in it? David had hope. And so with hope came, guess what, y'all? A prayer life. You want to know why some of y'all's prayer life is stagnant? Because you don't believe in what you it ain't no use in praying if you don't believe you're going to receive anything. Everybody see that? What does the Bible tell us? He that come to God must first believe that he is, and is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. See, that's the first thing. You ain't going to go ask somebody for something if you don't believe they can deliver what it is you're asking for. You see that? And so, there, with hope, that's where the prayer life was. God, do you want me to pursue? And it wasn't until he asked God. I want you to see that now. It was not until he had hope to believe something could be delivered to him that he asked God, and then after that, God responded. Yeah, y'all, after you get done with all that weeping, all that crying, God don't hear all of that. That's all of that mourning and crying and things that you do, that's from a lack of faith. You see, God don't respond to unbelief, except to judge it. God responds to faith. Faith was, even though I got 360,000 trying to kill me, you know, and I'm suffering just like they are suffering, I'm going to turn to God and see what he's got to say about it. You see that? I'm going to have some type of hope. My wife and I, we were going into the projects to pray with people and talk to them about the Lord. And it was two young teenage girls sitting on the porch, the steps there, and we were talking to them. I think we asked them something like, what do y'all want to do with your lives? And one girl, I think she responded with, I just want to graduate from high school. Is that what she said? Something like that. I just want to graduate from high school. And so now I was glad to know that she wanted to graduate, but heartbroken that was her goal in life. Everybody see? She couldn't see past that. She felt like if I graduate from high school, I've accomplished something. Some years ago, when I was living in Louisiana, my children had caught a frog. And they put that frog in a jar, and they put holes in the top of that jar. And they thought, well, we got a good pet. We got us a pet frog. And I told them, you take that frog out of that jar and go release it back into nature where it's intended to be. And of course they looked sad about it, and I told them why. I said, that jar is only about this tall. I said, now you see that frog jumping up and hitting his head with, on the top of that jar lid. I said, now what'll happen if you leave that frog in that jar, he'll train himself only to jump so high. So that even after you release him, he won't jump any higher because you've trained him. If I jump an inch taller than that or higher than that, I'm going to hit my head on something. Mm-hmm. So you will handicap him by putting a lid on top of him. Mm-hmm. So before he get used to that life, release him so he can jump as high as God intended for him to jump. Because they depend on height, jumping high to get away from predators, the snakes and stuff like that. And that's what the devil have done to some of God's people. Have put them in jars and have trained them. You'll never get past this point. Look at your life. Look at all the mistakes you made. It's evident. You'll never get past this point. Now just be glad that I put some leaves in there for you to eat and put some holes in the top of that container. Just live in that jar. And see, faith says, you know what? God wants me to jump higher than what I see now.
Yes. Amen.
He wants me to do more than what I'm doing now. Amen. If God can use Saul, a man that was a persecutor and was helping to kill believers, if God could convert him and use him to shake this whole world,
Amen.
My past don't match up to his. You see that? He said he was the chief of sinners. Not me. He said it. So if he was the chief, I wasn't worse than him. God, you see, why? Because God gets glory when situations look impossible. That's when he gets glory, when it looks hopeless to you. Now, just because a situation look hopeless don't mean that you have to adopt that is hopeless.
Amen.
The mindset should be, God, it looks hopeless to the world, but it's that great for a reason. Now, I'm glad you're going to use this situation and get glory out of it.
Amen. Amen.
You see.
Hallelujah.
Even when I was in the hospital, the doctors, there's several of them coming in the room. And, of course, I had that plaque built up on the wall of my arteries, of my blood vessels there. But that was the only thing that they could find. They thought, well, you're an African American and you're the size that you are. Surely you got some kind of diabetes somewhere. You got high blood pressure somewhere in there. Except I didn't.
Amen.
So me being in that hospital, it defied their logic. It defied their textbooks. Mm-hmm. God used it to show them, you can't put everybody in a box. Some folks just walk by faith.
Amen.
You see that? Now, there was one that accepted that. I don't know what the rest of them did. One of them did. See, you can't box God in. And so if we know that we can't box God in, then we can't box his servants in. I mean, all of us that have accepted his salvation. God will do with you exactly what he wants to do with you. When I went to prison, they told me when you get out, you're not going to hardly be able to get a good job. All that is going to follow you. Oh, yeah, it followed me everywhere I went. I'm sure they could see on my record, yeah, you did some time in prison, but you know what else was following me? Grace.
Amen. Hallelujah.
That's what they wasn't counting on. Folks, the Bible tells us in the book of Proverbs, God turns the heart of kings, whether so how he will it. Doesn't matter that education, doesn't matter how much you think you know, it matters who you know. That's God. You see that? That's you have to learn to think above the picture that the devil has shown you. So if you continue to read this story here, you will see that David, he conquered and took everything back that was stolen. Let's read a little bit further. Verse 9, so David went, and he and 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Bizar, where those that were left behind stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 abode behind, which was so faint that they could not go over the brook Bizar. And they found an Egyptian in the field, and brought him to David, and gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water. And they gave him a piece of a cake of figs, and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit came again to him, for he had eaten no bread, nor drunk any water 3 days and 3 nights. And David said unto him, To whom belongest thou? And whence art thou? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite, and my master left me, because 3 days agone I fell sick. We had made an invasion upon the south of the Cherethites, and upon the coast which belongeth to Judah, and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. And David said to him, Canst thou bring me down to this company? And he said, Swear unto me by God, that thou wilt neither kill me, nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will bring thee down to this company. And when he had brought him down, behold, they were spread abroad upon all the earth, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil they had taken out of the land of the Philistines and out of the land of Judah. Everybody see that? Mm-hmm. They were eating. You know, when you get full, you ain't trying to do nothing but take a nap. Now you mix that with drinking alcohol, and you show enough, drinking wine, you show enough in trouble. God delivered these people right into David's hands. Not only that, but they came across, on their way, they came across an Egyptian, a man that belonged to that company. Everybody see that? Now, the question is, you see the timeline here? Now the question is, where are you on that timeline, and how long have you been there? Are you still stuck back in the crying until you have no more power, and then you drink some water so you can get some more tears to cry? Are you still stuck at that stage where you're looking for somebody to blame, instead of going to God and asking God to remove that lid? You see that? Or you're going to do something about it. Or you're going to look to God the way that David did. Now I want you to notice something. All of these men that were with David, ready to kill him. And David himself was able to encourage all of them to go in another direction. Now the question is, when somebody comes to you with hopelessness, are you feeding into it? You right. Our children ain't gonna never do this. Are you feeding into it, or are you the beacon of hope? Are you the one that's saying, you know what, but God's word says this? What did God show you? You remember that dream you had? One man turned his whole situation around. Now David he had been anointed king, but he hadn't yet taken the throne. You look what would have happened. What would have happened had David escaped out of these people's hands that wanted to kill him? he'd have been an enemy to Israel after Saul was dead. He never would have been able, God would have had to kill all of them for that. For David to take the throne and be successful the way that he was. So David knew, you know what, my future is at stake. Now, if you'll understand that, the devil comes to bring hopelessness to you because he don't want you to have a future. He don't want you to see what God sees and what he sees as well. He wants you to think that's all there is. That's all. Your life is going to always be like that. You're going to always be in this jar. Nobody's going to ever see you outside. You see, now that's another thing. You have to learn. You can't live by what people see. What you think. The devil's playing in your mind about how people see you. David's people saw him as raggedy and a failure. You done led us all over here, but now our wives and children are gone. So in this moment, he was the only one that saw himself as somebody that can get beyond where he was at the time. And God helped him because he was able to go beyond what the situation looked like and what he saw at the time. You see that? That's the way you got to live as a believer. If you don't live that way, you're going to be miserable. And not only that, the dangerous part is you'll be questioning God. You see, you'll be questioning God and thinking God done slacked up somewhere because of your lack of faith in him. That's not God's will. Hopelessness. It's like I said, it's a spirit, and it sets an atmosphere with people. If you're a person of faith and you're walking by faith, it's easy to pick up when you walk into an atmosphere of hopelessness, where people are just down, they're sad. As a believer, I understand that things are going to go on. You don't have any reason living there in hopelessness. You have no reason to live there. You see? Because even beyond this life, we have another one that's better than what we're experiencing now. Now, here's the thing about it. By faith, God wants you to experience heaven here. By faith, because you rest in him. You see, even when loved ones die, if they die in the Lord, you'll see them again. But if you're hopeless, you're going to be the one that's all over the coffin and folks got to pull you out. I grew up in a church where folks cut up. Everybody liked going to them funerals. Because folks was cutting up. As a child, that was entertaining. Of course you sad because you see somebody you love up there. But I'm telling you, it had this one family, my sister knows what I'm talking about. Them folks acted a fool. And they had a big family, so we were going to funerals every other year to see what they were going to do. It was sad because even, the Bible tells us even in death we're supposed to have hope. Even when we experience the loss of someone, we have hope. You're not going to live forever here and then they're going to be forever over there. You see, you're going to cross paths again. And so it's God's will that you rely on him. You see that you look to him for your help, for your salvation. And that you don't let the devil keep you in that jar. You don't let him keep you in a sense of hopelessness. As long as you feel hopeless, God can't do anything for you. Because faith is what moves him to begin with.
Amen.
All right. All right. Do we have any questions or comments?
pregnancy. And not only that, but just like overall, how you raise that kid.
Okay. Alrighty. Do we have any other questions or comments? Alright. Anyone want to share what how the Lord may have spoke to them?
I think the part that you said, you know, whatever comes up in your life, it's important to get to the root of it. And it seems really simple, but you know what came to me was you and I had a conversation some months back, months and months ago, and I think I was getting ready to polish my nails or something, and you were like, why do you do that? And I didn't really have an answer, and I think we talked a little bit more about it, and I was like, well, you know what, I'm going to pray. And you might have mentioned that at that time about, you know, like what's at the root of you doing that, especially if you do things and you don't really have an answer for it. And I think you might have mentioned it at that time about, you know, like what's at the root of that, or have you ever thought about it? And I was like, I'm going to pray about that. And I said then, I was like, you know, I'm not going to do that anymore until I know where that's coming from. Like, what is my purpose behind doing it? And that actually came to me when you said that. You know, get to the root of whatever comes up in your life. And that seems like a simple thing, but there are many things that come up in our lives that can seem like a challenge or an obstacle. And I guess, you know, it's important for us, especially as believers, to seek the Lord out and ask the Lord, you know, why is this coming up, or why are we reacting this way, or, you know, whatever it might be that's coming up, that we will look to get to the root of it so that, you know, we can, I guess, continue on in the Lord and not hold on to things that maybe we need to let go of.
Amen. All right. Do we have anyone else want to share?
I like the part where you said there's no sense in asking God for things if we don't believe He'll deliver on those things that we're asking about. It was something that we were talking about last night during prayer time, about something that the Lord had showed me like a few days earlier in the week. When I was driving to work, normally on my way to work, I use the GPS, and every time I look at the GPS, I always look at like, okay, it's giving me 2 routes, and it's gonna tell me which is the fastest one, but it always shows like in red what the traffic is like. And every time I see red, I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not going that way. And I just take all these back roads, but to get back to the main road that the GPS was telling me to go down anyway. And I was driving one day and I did that, and the Lord was like, that's the problem. Like, the GPS is clearly giving you instructions, but because you think you have another way, or you just don't trust the source of the information for whatever reason, you judging it by based on what you see instead of just trusting the instructions that you're being given. And you do the same thing with me. And I thought, I can't even trust the GPS when I'm asking you, Lord, for instructions. But I would have never thought of that. And the Lord was telling me that by doing that, I had been practicing not trusting, and then losing patience pretty much because I didn't trust the instructions. Now I got to figure out and scramble how I'm going to get to work fast because I don't feel like sitting in traffic going 45 instead of going 55. So that's what made me think of that when you said it doesn't make sense to ask God for stuff if we don't believe He's going to deliver, or if we don't trust that He knows what's best.
Amen. All right, brother.
Yeah, I thank God. It's just the message encourages me to, you know, to not faint when you find yourself in a situation naturally that seems to be impossible, but it's an opportunity for God to get the glory. You know, and you add to your list of testimonies. You know, you should be praising God in advance, you know, when you find yourself in those situations, because you know that God is going to come through. You know, you won't have a testimony without being put in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
It increases faith and everything else like that. So,
Amen.
blessing.
Amen.
All right. Anyone else want to share?
I wanted to share something that the Lord told me the other day about, like I was telling you guys testimony about us getting an apartment, and like I was like, for a couple of seconds I was like, okay, it's all done, you know, like, the Lord bless us and I don't have anything to worry about, and like we could stay somewhere and stuff like that, and everything happened by the 31st. And then I was like, and then it came to me that it doesn't stop just there. It doesn't stop there, that like just because we got, you know, the apartment, that our trust in God never ever stops. Like, even though He's providing for you over and over again, like, there's tests that can still arise in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, the next day I talked to the lady in the office, and it wind up that they got it wrong, where they said we won't have to pay till October, but they had gotten that wrong, and we're actually gonna have to pay the full month's rent by September. And I wasn't surprised when she told me. I was like, oh my gosh, I knew something was gonna happen, because the Lord just told me it doesn't stop here, just continue trusting me. And so, I had asked her a question, though at the end of the conversation, and it was out of fear, and even though it was like a small question, like I immediately regretted it. But on the application, she was helping me to fill it out, and I told her, I was like, I don't know how much I make a month, can you help me calculate that? I make so-and-so a week, or so-and-so an hour. And then so she's like, yeah, and then I told her, and then I was thinking in my head, I was like, did I tell her that I work part-time? I was like, I can't remember, maybe they put full-time, and they're thinking that we have enough to make it, or something like 3 times the rent, but we don't, or something. So that came to my mind, and I asked her, I was like, well, just to make sure, I was like, on the application, you did put that I work part-time, right? And then so she stopped what she was doing, and she looked at me, and the Lord spoke to her, and she looked at me, and she's like, if you know you're gonna, what'd she say? She's like, if you know you have the money, what? Oh yeah, she's like, you got approved. What are you worrying about? And she's like, if you know you have the money to be able to pay your bills, then what are you worrying about? And then I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, yeah, what am I worrying about? So I just wanted to share that even when things are looking up and stuff, like, it doesn't just stop there.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. Anyone else want to share? So I have a question real quick, and I want you all to think about this. How many of us today find ourselves feel like the devil have put us in a jar and we've been voluntarily staying there? In other words, like you've just limited yourself. Like, y'all understand what I mean? The devil have told you, for whatever reason, this is where you are, this is where you're going to be, and you've accepted it. How many of you say that now? You've been living in a jar voluntarily. I'm looking for hands.
Could it be the same as like the Lord bless you and then you just feel like that's enough, like you don't want to keep going back to the Lord, like you feel like you done got enough out of the Lord or whatever?
There's a lot of people there are a lot of people that are there. The Lord doesn't bless them, and they don't want to go back. Okay, God, you've done enough. Now, let me tell you what's on the back end of that, what's behind that. It's a subtle lack of faith, because you feel like you're undeserving. And the reason for that is because you don't know that God is blessing you not for your sake, but for Jesus' sake.
Amen.
It's His righteousness. You see that? So we're not supposed to line our lives up against blessings and make this equal that. You see that? God takes pleasure in blessing His children. You see? And so our only mindset towards blessings ought to be, Lord, help me to stay focused on you and remember you while I'm being blessed. And help me to be a blessing to other people.
Amen.
You see that? That's supposed to be our focus.
Amen.
You see, God, yeah, so it's a subtle, that's akin to people not expecting much because they feel like if I don't expect much and I don't get much, then I'm not disappointed. But you're living disappointed because you don't expect much. See, you're living there. That's not God's will. I expect. You see, y'all see that up against the wall right there? Yeah, what is that right there on that wall?
Eye chart.
An eye chart. It's there because I expect one day to come here and be able to read it without my glasses. That's why it's there. You see, it ain't like I done just ran out of places to put stuff on the wall. You see, that's there because one day I'll stand here and I'll turn, I'll read the bottom line there. You see that? Without my glasses. I expect that. That's why it's there. So that's what we say. When you have expectations of God, you prepare for it. The same way you prepared to come here. You didn't come here in your pajamas thinking Armageddon was going to happen before you got here. You see that? You expect, and when you expect, your life proves it. You make preparation. Faith without works is dead. So if you have faith, works is going to back it up. Again, it's all about what you have faith in. You see that? You had faith that you were going to get here, so you got up and got dressed. You got in your car. You made sure you had gas enough to get here. You see? You had faith in it. Now, God wants you to take that faith and put it in other areas as well. Do you have faith to be healed? It's the same faith it took for you to get here. All them crazy drivers, you've seen them. You might be one of them. You expected to get here in one piece. You know, when I was in the hospital, one thing I thought about, those doctors, they something. You'll be eating more medicine than you are food when they get done with you, if you'll let them. You see? And so they were trying to prescribe this and that for me. They had all kind of prescriptions for me when I checked out. We're going to give you a lifetime prescription of high blood pressure medicine. Except I didn't have it. Well, just in case. And I was telling them, life is a chance. Life is a chance. Well, you might die one day. Well, that's coming. If the Lord tarry, we're going to leave here. And He chooses how we leave. Doesn't matter how your heart is pumping or whatever. So, and I asked the doctor, the nurse told me, said, ask the doctor what your EFI is, which is the strength of your heart. He told me the number. He told me the number. I said, is that good? He said, yeah, it's really good. And so why are y'all trying to prescribe all this medicine for me? Just in case. That's the devil wanting people to live by fear. You see that? Like I told him, we take a chance every time we get in our car. Does that mean we're supposed to walk to keep from getting into a car accident? No, I walk by faith. Just about every day when I look at the news, now I got a motorcycle. Just about every day when I look at the news, somebody done died in a motorcycle accident. You see it every day, especially here in Tennessee. I've never seen it as much as I've seen it here in Tennessee. The amount of accidents and people dying on the roadways. Folks dying walking, just trying to cross the street. That ain't gonna make me set up a tent and live in it and not go anywhere. I just have to believe that God is with me where I go. And whatever the devil got planned down the road, that the Lord used to show me some years ago. every time he sent me somewhere to pray for somebody or to go somewhere and preach for him or something like that, I would see the path to get there, all the turns it took to get to the place where God was sending me, and then I would see the angels going in the road, pulling stuff out of the road, stuff that the devil had set there. Traps and things like that, accidents that were supposed to happen. And that was the Lord showing me, I've cleared the path, you just get in your car and drive. And that's the way. Now, he didn't have to show me that 100 times before I started believing. That's everyday life.
Amen.
That's every day.
Yeah.
You think the devil wanted you to hear the word today? No, he was trying to kill you before you got here. When you get to heaven, you'll be able to see all those setups the devil had for you. And then you'll know then how great God is. Or you can just accept it now.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Amen.
All right. We have any other questions or comments? All right, so I pray now that those of you that the devil have put in that jar, you'll come out of that. You'll expect more. You see that? You'll expect more. You see, God's got something big for your life. But you have to receive it. Doesn't matter what God's plan is. If you don't receive it, that's one of the disappointing things about being a parent. You can see things in your children. You can see the greatness there that they don't understand yet. And because they don't understand it, they're acting a certain way. You can see the greatness. You can see the potential as a parent. But if they don't see it, they're going to act just like, like it ain't there. You see, that's not God's will. All right. If that's all now, I guess we'll go ahead and dismiss you all. I got one more request that you all, anybody that's been healed by this ministry, through this ministry, however it may have come through this ministry, if you will send us an email, even those of you that's local here, you've experienced a healing or miracle or something after prayer, if you will send us an email of the details, the history of what it was, and so that somebody that's never heard the testimony will understand it from A to Z, we'd appreciate it. Now, I don't know why God is asking me to do that, but that's something that he wants us to do. Anybody that's, whether you're here locally or wherever you may be in the world, if you've experienced a miracle or healing through this ministry, email it to us, and we'll see where God take it from there. All right. If that's all now, we'll go ahead and dismiss you in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ.